Welcome, everyone.
Welcome to our compliance conversations in the midst of COVID-19, hosted by ILSA Inc. and Spot On Insurance. Today we'll be covering first steps for newly licensed surplus lines brokers.
First of all, thank you everyone for attending. This session will not take longer than 1 hour. If you do want to stay on and chat a little bit more, we're definitely open to doing that. Everyone's mics have been muted, but later on at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers and we'll unmute your mics. You are able to write any of your compliance questions in the little icon, if you'll see down below where it says Q&A, you will be able to write your questions.
And Sabrina will take care of them for you.
Guilty.
Okay, so joining us today is Russ Foster, General Manager for ILSA, Rabecca Garcia, the Surplus Lines Manager, Brian Allen, Surplus Lines Supervisor. Where is Brian? We lost him. Sherry Grove, Surplus Lines Supervisor, Angie, Dyer, team leaders, and of course Sabrina, Slater, our Annuals and Corporate Manager, who will be handling our little Q&A here. And our guest panelist comes to us from California Surplus Lines. We have Joanne Delgado. Joanne, welcome.
And Joanne is the VP of Education and Compliance at the California SLA. We have a lot of participants on, at least 30 something, so that's really good. We'll get right into it, and we just wanted to let you guys know that we've been doing these every week. This is the first week that we're doing it as a webinar, so the style is a little bit different, but every week we look to improve. In the past sessions, we've given some COVID-19 regulatory bulletins that have been disseminated by the insurance departments. So we're not going to go over all of those, one at a time, but I would love for Russ to share where we post those on our ILSA newsroom.
All right, let me navigate over here. And what you should be seeing now is the state regulatory bulletins page on our corporate website, ilsainc.com. We have a number of things on our website for the industry, just to make things easier. And we've been doing the state regulatory bulletins forever, but now more than ever, this is a really valuable page. It's got up-to-the-date bulletins from each state on all different categories. We have bulletins posted here sometimes before they make it actually onto the state website. So if you're looking for anything in particular, we have categories that you can choose from over here on the right. The actual bulletins are right there. If you click on them, it'll take you to the actual bulletin from the state. We also have everything tagged. So if COVID-19 is your thing of the moment, click on that. It will take you to those bulletins that are specific to COVID-19. If you're tired of COVID-19 and you just want a little inspiration, you can go up here to the top and click on something inspirational. But that's a very valuable page. Our marketing team works very hard to keep that up to date, and they're in it all day, every day. They're swamped with bulletins right now. Another great feature that we have, if you need to get a hold of any of the regulatory folks out in the States, on the Regulator Contact page, we've got all the information that you're going to need to contact anybody you want. So in honor of Joanne, we'll go to California here, and it will show you the Department of Insurance, the number, the website, and if there's special features like a licensee search, there will be a tag there specifically for that. Department of Revenue, Secretary of State, Stamping Office, and Surplus Lines Association. So that's a very valuable tool. We keep all of these things handy for anybody that needs it, but especially now with people stuck at home. If you don't have all the resources at home that you do at the office, then this is a really great resource for you.
Thanks, Russ. Another resource that we talked about last time, and we're not going to go to that webpage, is the WSIA. They have a real great resource page. We use it a lot. So, if you guys definitely take a look at it if you need that. So thanks, Russ, for that.
Some folks that couldn't join us today have sent in questions. It's become a regular thing with us. And so Sabrina, can you start us off with a few of those questions, please?
Yes, sir, of course. Now the first one is kind of lengthy, but bear with me. It is a good one. There is a law in Georgia, and of course it's state specific. So there is a law in Georgia that states to sell a carrier's products, you need to be appointed with that carrier. Yet in the case of a wholesaler, this seems to not be applied. So I'm wondering if there's a workaround. I'm hiring a lot of unproven producers. I'd like to wait to get them appointed with my agency's carriers until they have proven their production capabilities. Do they need to be appointed with the carrier to quote that carrier's products to insureds? My appointed account managers will bind the business. And this came from Doug. Now, I know that's not necessarily surplus lines related, but it is definitely a question that was asked, so we want to address it. I know that we have Joyce King. She's got a huge background in licensing. She might be able to kind of help with that question as well. I'll let you take it away.
All right. Thanks for submitting the question, Doug. So we have done some work with carriers, and your question relates to how does the state feel about it, but I also have to look at it from what does the carrier think about in that situation. So if you go to the state laws, the Georgia state laws, and I did research some today, and I've got them copied and pasted into a handy dandy email, and I'm ready to send those over to you. Obviously, the law is very clear that if they're selling, soliciting, binding, negotiating, quoting anything, obviously they need to get a license. So I wanted to have something to back me up, starting from that point. They must be licensed. So you're saying that can they quote and yet not be appointed with the carrier? I'm really not aware of a workaround. If there's something going on with wholesalers, I'm just not personally aware of that. Whatever you know on that, I'd love for you to share that with me, and I can definitely do a deep dive into that. But what I do know from a compliance standpoint is that anybody that is in any way dealing with the insureds and they are quoting or binding or discussing that business or that prospective business, they do need to be licensed by the state. What I found from Pearson View talked very explicitly about the appointments, and in Georgia, I think they're referred to as agent certificates of authority. We call them appointments. The term certificate of authority is thrown around quite a bit. Secretary of State uses it. The departments of insurance use it when, like licensing or registering TPAs and stuff like that. But in this case, it does refer to the agent appointments as a certificate of authority. And it's very clear to say if they're licensed and if they are doing business, they need to be appointed as well. So a little bit further on that. One thing I would say is that it is the carrier that bears the burden of any fees when they're appointing at the state. I'm not aware of any chargeback to agents or agencies. I guess that's possible, but I've not heard of that. So it shouldn't, it wouldn't be any additional expense to you to have them appointed. And then lastly, what I want to say is that the carriers have a vested interest in anyone that is representing their products. So I have personally seen carriers, they do their own background check because that's part of their due diligence to before sending that appointment into the state to say, we've vetted this person. I have seen a state do a background check and multiple times give agents a license. And you think that agent is good to go because the state's vetted them for purposes of vetting them for the consumer. However, I have seen some carriers do their background check, which is a deeper dive, and actually not issue the appointment, even though the person is licensed. So all that to say, the carriers care who's talking about their products and representing their products to the consumer. So it's really only fair to give them that opportunity. And that's all I have on that.
Okay, so I see actually Doug has just sent out another question, kind of like a follow-up. Regarding wholesalers, my point is that an agent can sell a policy through a wholesaler, through the wholesaler's appointments, without the carrier appointing the agent directly.
Oh, okay. I see what they're asking. Then do give me a little bit of time to look into that specifically.
Okay,
And
perfect.
I can get back to you, Doug. I saw your email address when you submitted the question, so you will hear from me.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Joyce, for tagging on to that. I know you didn't plan on doing it, but we do appreciate it.
Hey, Sabrina, I don't know if Joanne, from her perspective, you know, like, and let me just back up a little bit. I didn't even introduce Joyce King, who has such extensive knowledge with our company. She's been with us since 1905.
Pretty
But
much.
she has experience in licensing, in surplus lines, in corporates and annuals at the Secretary of State level. So she's like an all-around person. And thank you so much for that detailed information, Joyce. But I want to get also Joanne's perspective, since Joanne is definitely now with the California Surplus Lines Association, but in her previous lifetime, she worked for a very large carrier and on a national basis. So maybe she can give us some insight from the carrier side.
Going to, and so thank you, and thank you for having me today as well. What I actually, my view, and although I came very strongly from the surplus line side, I was responsible for an agency that wrote both admitted and non-admitted business. So in my experience from the appointment side, you know, Joyce's findings specific to Georgia is correct, and all of the agents that would be quoting would need to be appointed with the state. In general, it's what I would say, coming from a larger agency writing nationally, that it was really a work model that we put in place for all of our states, regardless of specific requirements. It's a really good operating procedure, and really avoids, it can, you know, in most states, it's not costly, and it avoids any concern or issues coming back later on as that transaction flows.
Awesome. Cheryl Jo Henty also mentioned that she works as an MGU, and that was very relevant to her duty. So she appreciated you, Joyce, as well. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll kind of focus on, okay, now I have this big, huge surplus lines broker license, and what the heck do I do now? So first and foremost, now that I have this surplus lines license, what are some of the responsibilities that I need to be prepared for now?
Well, first thing, with anything that I do, I have to always make a checklist. That's like the most important thing, because there's so much information. You don't want to lose track. And for me, I have to make a checklist. So like, for instance, are you required to be a membership, a surplus lines association membership? You know, some states require it, some states don't. Have I set up my accounts, my passwords, you know, all my credentials? And then I always list that information on my checklist, because there's so many states. You got to know what forms you have. Each state is different. Some have an affidavit, so you got to know which forms. And so also, and when you're making this checklist, know the frequency, because some states are monthly, some are quarterly, some are semi-annual, some are annual. There's so many different reports that are out there. And also, oh, and see, I can go on. That's
all day long.
Go on.
That's the reason why you have to make a checklist, because like various states, you've got to know the taxes, because each state has their own taxes, and some are taxable, certain things, you know, like the policy fee, the stamping fee, the fire marshal taxes. So there's just so much. So my advice to anyone, when you're getting into the surplus lines and knowing what to do, you have to make a checklist, because if you don't, you'll just be everywhere, and that's, you don't want to do that.
And I can vouch for that. I've seen her checklists. She has a lot of them.
Hey, I'm not going to knock anybody for a checklist.
We have to.
Not in this industry, that's for dang sure. Okay, so our next question. What are some requirements to register as a member of an SLA? Now, I will jump on this before Ted and Arleen get on to me. What the heck is an SLA? In this industry, whether we're here at ILSA in-house or we're working with the DOI, with the Department of Insurance, Secretary of State, we have acronyms for everything. So let's first, what is an SLA? And then what do I have to do to become a member?
Okay, an SLA is the Surplus Lines Association. Not all states have an SLA. To become a member of the SLAs, some of them have paper membership applications. Some have online applications that you can process. Let's see, North Carolina, Washington, their memberships are required to renew every single year. And there's a $100 fee for that. So you need to make sure that you keep up with that. First and foremost, make sure your email address, your mailing address, all your addresses and contact information is always up to date, because they will mail, they will email, they will call you, you know, and my email went to the junk folder is not really a good excuse for it. So, you know, just make sure everything's up to date. Illinois is a state to where if you do not process that application within like 2 weeks, they will start the termination of your license. And you just got it.
So Angie, you mentioned just a couple of states. Is all states required to have a Surplus Lines Association membership, or is it just a few?
Just a few. There's just a handful of them, probably 10 or 15, maybe even 20. But not all states have it. And, you know, some of them go to the
That's like 4 handfuls.
Yeah, no, not all states have it.
I want to jump in real quick, if you don't mind, Angie, because you said something really important, and that was to make sure that your address information and email addresses are updated at the state. So once you're issued your surplus lines license, the SLAs most of the time find out about you from the departments of insurance. So you need to make sure that you're on NIPR, CERCON, or wherever you make your updates. If anyone's moved, if the email address has changed, be sure to get that stuff updated in the system, so that when they pass on the info to the SLAs, especially an email address, and that's who the SLA is going to send the packet to that email address. If you never get it, like she said, in Illinois, if you don't immediately respond within a couple of weeks, they're going to go ahead and start the paperwork to cancel that license.
Yes.
And those aren't, as far as I know, those aren't cheap to get. So, and they're not cheap to maintain. So you want to make sure everything is updated with the departments of insurance, so that they can share good information to this Surplus Lines Association.
And even after you get your license, if your address changes and you do it at the DOI or Department of Insurance and the SLAs don't always, you know, intertwine, and they don't always communicate very well. Yeah. So always make sure you update it in all areas.
So Angie, you mentioned that in Illinois, you have to register with the SLA within 2 weeks. Are there any other states that are like out there like that? Like that sounds really...
Idaho is one of those states. They're very, very persistent about getting their registration completed. But as far as any other states, it's on a state-by-state basis. Washington, you don't have to join as long as you're not writing business.
Oh.
If you start writing business, then you have to join.
Yeah, in order to have access to their online system, you have to be a member at that point. So you can hold a license, but like Angie was saying, as soon as you start writing that business, you have to become a member, because that's the only way you can access their online systems and process everything.
Okay.
Yep. North Carolina will also terminate your license if you let that membership lapse.
Yep.
All right. Well, Brian, you kind of mentioned a little bit on this or touched on this a little bit, but what are some of the benefits of a surplus lines broker actually joining the Surplus Lines Association?
Yeah, there are a lot of benefits. You know, like she mentioned earlier, most of the states don't require that you join, but if you do join, there are a lot of benefits to being a member in a lot of different states. I know it sounds like a broken record every time you talk about something surplus lines related. You're basically saying, well, it's different in every state, because it is. A lot of the benefits. Yeah, exactly. In general, the SLAs, they do a lot of things, like they retain lobbyists to represent the interests of the licensees in their state. They'll help monitor new legislation that is coming through that may be affecting the industry. They do that in order to keep their members informed, help promote education, and provide some resources and tools for people to navigate through these new laws and rules that come down the pipe. A lot of them will provide other resources like online portals and systems. Those help facilitate filing of reports and policies and all that kind of stuff. They provide access to updated forms and affidavits, just overall trying to make sure that everyone stays on the same page and is aware of all the changes going on in the industry. They also work hand in hand with a lot of the other players in the industry to help gather and report data. A lot of that helps provide insight into different trends and things that are emerging in the industry, so that they can kind of, again, help guide all their members and anyone who needs help out there. And so basically you can think of an SLA as kind of an industry educator and an advocate at the same time.
So let's switch gears a little bit. Do most states require reports even if you're not writing business yet?
Sabrina, that is a very good question, and something that is overlooked a lot of times by new agents or agencies just getting licensed. The fact is, there are about 27 states that do require some type of periodic reporting, even if there's no business written. We generally call those zero reports or no business reports. And again, it does vary by state, but you know, as to the frequency or when they report, like Alabama and Oklahoma, they do require zero reports annually. But you need to remember that if you are licensed in Oklahoma, that they do require an annual report, because they require quarterly reports if there is business. But don't get caught in, you know, oh, I don't have to report quarterly, so I don't have to report. Yes, they do have an annual report due. A lot of states that will not require a report any other time will require at least an annual report for some type of reporting. And penalties can be a big part of this, even for zero reports. Illinois, for example, their penalties can be up to $2,000, even for a zero report. And they do not waive or reduce penalties. Now in California, and Joanne, it's good to see you. So maybe you can expand on this too a little bit. But in California, they require an annual report for the agency. And if you are an agent that's affiliated with that agency, then on your own individual license, then you do not have to produce or have to submit a report unless you have a $50,000 bond in California. If you have a $50,000 bond, then you also have to submit a zero report on your individual license. Now, to take that one step further, if the agency has had $20,000 or more in taxes the previous year, then monthly reporting is required, even zero, for those, for those agencies. And then Kentucky is a whole another animal in itself. Kentucky, you have your premium tax reports, and those are required, zero reports quarterly and annually. They also require a surcharge report, which has to be done annually, even if it's zero. And then they have a municipality report on top of that. Now, the municipality zeros are not required unless you have filed in the Louisville jurisdiction. If you file in Louisville, then you're required forever and ever to do zero reports. And so, just basically know the, know the requirements of the state when you get licensed.
Joanne, did you want to expound on California?
I'm going to say, I think Sherry covered everything really well. What I would say is that endorsed agent component. So if you're endorsed to an agency's license, there are several states that would not require the zero return that you would typically have to file. So in addition to California, there are other states where a zero report is not required for those agents that are endorsed. Illinois was a great example. It doesn't matter if you're endorsed, not endorsed. They want a report from each and every agent. So you're not relieved of the burden of the zero report. But if you do have premiums, your premiums for multiple agents can be all included on one return. So Illinois is actually very interesting in how it's structured. As well, I think the other piece in California is really understanding the tax liability. So if your prior year tax liability was in excess of $20,000, you are required to do monthly reporting and prepayments. The monthly reporting and prepayments is currently, it's about a 60-day lag, and it's based on the invoice date. So that would be the other interesting thing in California, is taxes are remitted not based on effective date, but based on when the policy was invoiced. And policies must be invoiced within 60 days of negotiation. So having gone through as an agent, lots of audits in my time, they will, when they come in to check that, look for all of those dates and require you to present evidence of the dates when, when they're doing a review. Trying to think of, with the current COVID-19, the only other, the state has relaxed and provided extra time to pay the taxes and fees. That was not part of their original rollout. So it was actually rolled out, I'm going to say about 2 weeks ago, but it predates back to the annual return that was due March 1st. So they are giving extra time right now for you to file those reports and pay the taxes. The bulletin, and I apologize that I don't have the bulletin number. I should have them all memorized, but there is a bulletin that lays out all of the new dates. So if anybody needs that and you let me know, I can forward it, but I'm guessing too, Russ showed us the website. It's probably one of the bulletins you already have.
Looking to see if it's up there right now.
And guys, I want to remind you, I know that we're covering a lot of stuff, a lot of state specific stuff, so really valuable information. We do the replays of this on our YouTube, on our Spot On Insurance YouTube channel. So if you have team members that haven't been able to join today's sessions, you can just point them out to the Spot On Insurance YouTube channel. every week we're just trying to improve and get better. This is the first week that we do it as a webinar versus a Zoom meeting. The other thing that we did this week was we had a guest panelist, which is Joanne from the California Surplus Lines Association. We are inviting a lot more regulators to come on. This is a time for us to come together as a community, share resources. So just like we're sharing resources, we appreciate you sharing resources with us as well. So I just wanted to let you know, by all means, go to our YouTube channel and share that with team members that haven't been able to join today. More questions?
All right, so do you only submit zero reports to the taxing authorities, or are there other state organizations that have zero reporting requirements?
That is a good question, and as stated before, it is all dependent on the state. Some of them report to the Department of Insurance. We have several that report to the Department of Revenues, the stamping offices, the surplus line associations. They get the stamping fees. North Carolina is one. The taxes go to the Department of Insurance and the stamping fees go to the SLA. So it's like you have to send a check here and pay online over here, and so there's multiple places where you got to go pay.
So this is one of those things I should probably keep track on my spreadsheet.
Most definitely.
I'm not going to have a spreadsheet. Thank goodness it's endless. It's going to be like this Bible that's probably like this thick,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, a checklist is the key. I mean, you have to with all this information. And if you
thank God for databases.
Yes.
Okay, so there's got to be like some awesome, amazing tool out there that we can use to get all this information. I mean, it just can't be dependent on me to go out and find all this information, because it probably won't happen. Please help me out.
Well, there wasn't a really cool tool until we just launched a cool tool April 1st. So we'll share that. Brian, if you'll share some of the features of what we rolled out April 1st, which was CATT, our online surplus lines tax tool. We'll just briefly show a couple of the features. I mean, just so that people know, any surplus lines processors that are at home that don't have all the resources at their fingertips, it's a good resource to know about and share with others.
Absolutely. I'll cover it a little bit just briefly. Joanne, you actually got a chance to look at an earlier version of this. This is something that we finally released to the public beginning of last month, April 2nd, I think it went out. But a lot of our clients have had this tool for a while. So basically the gist of it, you can go in here, select your state, tell us what kind of policy it is, and then we have matched the coverage types to those state-specific lists. So depending on their coverage codes, we use those exact codes here so that you can compare apples to apples. We do have definitions of how that state defines a premium, which fees are taxable, which fees are non-taxable, that sort of information. But once you get all your information plugged in and click calculate here, it takes you to the screen where you can actually get to all the handy resources. So this covers state stamps. So if you need to stamp those notices to the insureds on your documents, we have all of that here for you. We have it pre-formatted so that when you paste it to your documents, you're compliant. We have special instructions here, links to some of the websites that might come in handy for you. Like the $20,000 threshold we were discussing earlier, we have that piece on here, and then we link back to the law so you can read it in more detail. If there are any required forms, we have those here. If the state maintains an export list or an eligible insurers list, we're linking to those for you. It does have some handy information on how to pay, if they'll accept EFT or if they require a check, who to make that out to, all of that sort of information. And then another handy feature, I know Russ showed it earlier, but this button right here will take you back to that ILSA website, and will show you how you can get to the different departments in case you need to contact someone there. But that's pretty much the tool in a general sense. It gets into a lot of detail. We are developing it even more now. We started a conversation with Eleni. They took a look at it. They're interested in kind of the future vision that we have of creating an entire system to help people dump all that data and documents that they have to gather into our system, and then it basically will spit it out on the other side and help to facilitate getting that information to the states in whatever format they want it in. So we're very excited about what's coming up with it. Right now, it is already a very handy tool. I know I do a lot of research for our clients and for our processors to verify the laws and different rules in states. And I use this all the time. It's just so easy to go in here. I'm already in that state. A lot of the information I'm already going to need to look at and verify is there, and I have access to everything in one spot. So we're very, very excited about the tool.
Oh, thank you, Brian. I like to think that I have the mindset of a brand new surplus lines broker, only because the sense of I hear surplus lines tax filings and run for the hills. But as soon as I saw this calculator, this tax calculator, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is like everything at your fingertips. This is, I was telling them on our call earlier, I was like, man, I want wine. I want wine.
Hey, Sabrina, that's the reason we created the calculator, because we was getting asked a lot of questions. And like I said earlier, everything can be overwhelming. So we was trying to make it easier for the broker, for the individual, because if you have it in one place, you're not searching all these websites, you're not looking for the form, because right now you're already under a lot of deadlines, for the reports and stuff. So we was trying to make it easier where we can collect all this information for our clients, even for ourselves. It's a big library for us.
Why don't you say that? You guys built it to make your lives easier.
And other things we didn't think about. We were on the call with our attorney going over some of the details about disclaimers and things like that. And he was looking at it and he was like, man, I can already tell you about 30 different attorneys that I know would want this tool, because they do the same thing. They get asked by, someone who retains their services, hey, how can I sell this product in this state? And they have to go out and look that stuff up and make sure it's compliant. And it's just handy for anyone who needs that information about the business.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you for that update. Sabrina, do you have anything else for us?
I do. I have a few more questions. Once I start writing business, what am I required to report to each state, and how do I report it?
Okay, so how many states do we have? 50 in DC? Okay. There are almost as many ways to report and pay in each state, not quite. One of the big things is the SLIP portal. That's the Surplus Lines Information Portal. There are several states that use that portal. Now, I will say they are not carbon copies of each portal for each state. There are, different nuances, but normally once you can navigate one SLIP state, you can pretty much navigate the rest of them with, some little differences. So that's one way that that policies are reported. And most SLIP states will allow you also to pay your stamping fees online through that portal. Now, that's not to say that you will be able to pay your taxes through that portal, but you will be able to pay your stamping fees through that portal. Another way is a portal opt-ins, which is powered by the NAIC. There are probably 15, 20 or so states that use this portal for getting their information, their reports and policies. There are states that have it mandated and you must go through their portal. There are other states that it is just the recommended way. And from our perspective, if opt-ins is available, that's what we use.
Sherry,
because
I'm sorry, what was the name of that portal?
opt-ins, OPTINS, opt-ins.
Thank you.
And so I was, you know, as I was saying, all states that use it are not mandatory with it, but it's just an easy way to get your filing and pay your taxes all at once. Now with opt-ins, that's one thing you probably need to do just as soon as you get a license in a state that uses opt-ins. You need to, there's a packet of forms and paperwork that needs to be filled out. That needs to be done almost immediately as soon as you get your license, because it does take a while to get the opt-ins set up. And again, as we have said, states are not going to normally use, well, I was waiting on opt-ins to, you know, as an excuse for a late report. We do have some states too that, Arizona and Alabama, for example, they have their own websites that you actually do the policies, but then they have the reporting on opt-ins. So there may be two different things in some states that you have to do. Another way is paper. Yes, we still have some states that that do paper reports, and you know, we have some states that do paper, and then you can, and then they have a portal that you can go in and pay online, but they still have to have that paper report that has to be signed, you know, in their hand. Again, taxes and stamping fees. Most of the stamping fees, if it's a slip portal, can be paid on that portal. Other states, such as California and Texas, they have another website that you can go to actually make the payment, and you can keep track of your history and all of that on there. And then, of course, if there has to be a paper check, then the paper check has to be mailed in along with the report. So, you know, again, lots of different ways to submit and report your business.
So I'm going to step in with one question. You guys are doing this in all the states. Angie, tell me what's your easiest state and what's your most complicated state?
Texas is the most complicated to me.
Texas.
Oh, the easiest state would have to be Florida.
Okay. Okay.
Wow, I've never heard that about Florida before.
I'm kind of
This
surprised.
is the first.
Hey, Flip
It
is
wouldn't be
not.
one of my easiest, but
Yeah. Yeah, any of the slip states, they're pretty easy.
So no pressure because Joanne's on the call. Where do you rate California?
It's right under Texas.
Okay, so hey, are there any annual fees or dues for being a Surplus Lines Association member?
In North Carolina and Washington, they have the $100 fee, and that is the only two states that have fees.
Joanne, you were going to say something a second ago?
Oh, I was just going to say that California, the payments are going to two separate entities. So stamping fees do come to the Surplus Line Association, but you can easily make those payments through the slip portal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's super easy to set up and schedule, or just pay on demand. California as well, from a tax perspective, has opened up more options. So it used to strictly be EFT, where they're pulling from, you know, so ACH debit versus credit. They now offer both options. And it's my understanding, although I haven't personally experienced it, that there are ways now to pay by credit card, which is something that Texas offered. And I believe that California now has that option. I haven't personally tried it, but in one of the earlier bulletins this year, we did, the SLA did send out instructions on how to pay the taxes. And if you were to look on our website, there you will find all the links with all the instructions for setting that up.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome.
Sabrina?
All right, so do I file policies under the agency license or my individual license?
Well, you know, states are all different, and that's the reason you got to have your checklist. Like, a checklist. California and Washington, you submit under the agency, and other states like Vermont, Tennessee, it would be under the individual, and like Utah, Oregon, it's agency individual. It's just the way. So, for instance, if you are submit a policy for us, we kind of default to the agency first. If the agency doesn't have a license, then we'll go with the individual. So.
And I'll add on to that. I know some of the states will make exceptions. One example that popped into my head, we had a client who was licensed in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania typically makes you file everything under the agency license, but then in this instance, we had an individual with a license, but the agency was not licensed. So when we reached out to the state to ask for advice, which is what you should always do, believe me, we reached out to the state to get some advice on that. And in their case, they did make an exception, and they allowed that individual to file everything under her license until the agency got licensed. Just wanted to add that in. Sometimes the rules read pretty hard and fast, but if you do run into a bind like that, they understand, and we're all trying to do the right thing out there. And so a lot of times there are some workarounds. So you may want to check with the state just to make sure if you find yourself in a situation like that.
And let me add one other thing to that. I've learned, just communicate, just call the state. They're friendly, they're just like us. If you just tell them your situation, they're always willing to help. So, I mean, for me, that's what I do. I just get on the phone and I just call. I mean, of course, there's email, but sometimes we all get very busy in our day. So if you can just pick out that phone and just build those relationships with the state regulators, they're always, like I said, they're always willing to help us, or anyone.
Hey, so I just had a thought. I know, like, from the Department of Insurance standpoint, if you get an administrative action, that is definitely something that has to be notified and reported, like, either as soon as possible or within a certain time frame. Do you have to make those same notifications to the Surplus Lines Association?
No.
No?
No.
Sorry. I was like, I never thought about that.
No.
Awesome. That's one less thing I have to do.
Right?
Okay, so I do have one more question. I'm sorry, what, Brian?
I said, if you get in trouble with them, they'll tell everyone for you.
Believe it.
That's true.
Okay, so when I submit my policies to the states, what happens if I forget something like an affidavit or some information that I should have included in the first place?
That does happen. We've seen all kinds of different scenarios as people come in. We have to do a lot of cleanup a lot of times where they don't completely understand the rules and all of that. So it is going to happen. You're going to submit a policy. It's going to be missing some important information. Could be missing an affidavit that's supposed to be attached. Any number of things. And typically when a policy is submitted and it doesn't meet the requirements for compliance, or it's missing a key component, usually what the state will do is issue what they call a tag. Sometimes you see them called TICs. I guess that's how you pronounce it, TIQ, which is a transaction in question. But most of the time they call them tags. Usually the tag notice comes through the same online system that you use to submit the policy data. So you can go in there and most of them will have some kind of a dashboard basically saying, this many policies have been accepted, this many policies have been tagged with issues. So you can look into those tags. A lot of the systems will also, in addition to that, send you an email notification to let you know that something is wrong. and it cannot be accepted by the state. So once you receive that notice and it has been tagged, what you want to do is go in there. They'll usually give you instructions. They'll tell you what's wrong. Again, like Rebecca mentioned, if you're not sure how to fix it, just reach out to them and say, hey, I've got this tag. What do I do? And they'll usually help walk you through the steps on that. A lot of times it's just opening the filing up to edit the data, so you can go ahead and correct what's wrong in the data fields. A lot of times we'll see, maybe the taxes were entered incorrectly on the data side, but they're correct on the policy documents, and so they found that discrepancy. So you just have to go in, make your corrections. If it's an affidavit that was missing, most times you just upload that into the filing system, and then once the issue has been resolved, then that tag or that tick will be removed and the policy will be accepted by the state, and you can get your confirmation for your records. Like I said, there are any number of reasons that this happens. The most common things that we've seen, though, have been where the data doesn't match. Sometimes maybe an agent stamped the policy with the verbiage, but it was outdated verbiage. Maybe they changed it a few months ago and they didn't realize that or catch that change, and so they've stamped it with the wrong verbiage on their notice to the insured. But I did want to mention one thing. If you're binding policies using Lloyd's of London, that one, most every state does require that they see a list of the syndicates for Lloyd's of London. So we've seen that tag quite a bit. If the client sends the policy in, we catch those ahead of time, obviously. But if they send a policy in and the carrier is Lloyd's of London, you want to make sure and do a syndicate list where you break out all of the different syndicates that are involved in that. And basically there's they want to know what percentage of the risk each of those syndicates is taking on. So if you submit a policy without that, 99% of the time that one's going to get tagged, and they're going to want to see that syndicate list. And then once you submit that, they will clear the tag. So in order to avoid all of that, just kind of learn what the state is looking for before you submit it. And then that way you can avoid those tags. Just like anything else, we're submitting this stuff over to the states. That's what we try to keep in mind a lot. We're sending that work over to them. They have their steps that they have to take. They have to check over all this stuff. And so the fewer tags you can get, if you can send those packets in and they're complete and they have everything they need, they don't have to go chasing you down for this affidavit or asking why this is off or anything like that. It just makes that relationship between you and the regulators at the state even that much better, because they can just go on along, process it like it's supposed to be, and move on down the road. And it just makes everything a lot better if you try to think of these things ahead of time as much as possible.
Okay, I'm gonna thank you. I'm gonna go over to Christian now, talk to you guys a little bit about spot-on insurance for those of you who might be joining us and don't know what we do. Spot-on insurance is really an educational platform. What Arleen and I are doing is taking the knowledge that we've gained in the last 20 years,
it's 30 now.
30 years or so in the industry, and we're putting it out there and trying to make sure that everybody is getting a great education on what's going on in InsurTech. If you would go up to the top, Christian, and hit that video for a second. Christian has done Christian has done an absolutely outstanding job of setting up our website. We've got videos in there that highlight, for example, the CEO and founder of Rolify, who was just on recently. Our guys produce these wonderful little videos. You can go in and go through all the different episodes that we have done.
So we just have the promo videos on there, so it kind of gives you a flavor of the different episodes that we record. But we have insurance leaders from all over the world that come on Spot On Insurance. So it's a really good way, like let's say you're just doing surplus lines processing or your customer service, but you want to just kind of broaden your insurance knowledge. This is a great way to broaden your insurance knowledge without having to be reading. It's also, I know for myself, I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks and a lot of podcasts during these COVID-19 times, because we're washing more dishes, we're in the kitchen a lot more. So I use it to just kind of broaden my knowledge. So check it out when you get a chance. If you know of someone that would be a great guest, send me an email and let me know. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Awesome. Thanks, Christian.
So Sabrina, back to you. What's up?
All right, so I just have one more question. As you guys can tell, I'm sure already there's a wealth of knowledge and expertise on this call right now. I would just really like to know from our panelists, do you guys have any advice for any new surplus lines brokers or some poor new compliance coordinator that got shackled with surplus lines tax filings? Do you guys have any advice for them?
Run away.
Now, the biggest thing, and I was going to mention that earlier, we've talked a lot about different ways to avoid penalties and things like that, but they're going to happen. And so just keep in mind that all of the states have some sort of route that you can take to get help with that. So if I didn't submit reports, we've seen that with our company a million times. A client comes in, they got licensed in all 50 states because they were going to have this amazing product, and now that got put on a back burner, and so here they are with all these licenses, and they're not writing any business. So they think, oh, well, we don't have to do anything until we start writing business. Well, then they come in, they start getting the letters, hey, you owe us this much, you owe us this much. And so they come in and we have to kind of help clean that up. And we found that a lot of the states are understanding, and especially if it is your first violation, if this is the first time you've ever run into trouble in that state, a lot of them basically have a standing rule. Okay, we'll waive this first one. Just how to do this now and what the expectations are. And so moving forward, please make sure you get this in a timely manner type of thing. So just always remember that. You can always ask for a waiver. If that state doesn't do it, they'll tell you no, but you'd be surprised how many of them would be willing to work with you. Even the ones where it states plainly in the law that there's no workaround, that you're going to get hit with a fine. Someone in their organization may be able to make a decision that could help you rectify that problem. But my biggest advice, if they do that, make sure next time you do it right.
Joanne?
So I would tell you from both my professional experience and years in the industry and now working with the SLA in California, partner with your SLA if the state has an SLA. The SLA is there to be a broker resource. It's there to provide education to the broker. It's there to help you when you want to launch that new product, when you may have that difficult retailer wholesaler relationship and you're not sure how to handle it. The SLA really in every state is there and provides the same types of support and services to its members and is really there to represent the members and act as that go-between between the member and the CDI. So that would be my advice. Partner with your SLA. Give us a call out there in California. We're ready to help and get you going and set up.
Awesome, thank you.
Are we good? Sabrina, that was the last.
Good on my end. If we want to open it up and to the participants, if they have any other questions, I'd be more than happy to help address those.
Yep, we're open for any questions.
Hit me with what you got.
Well, while we're waiting for questions, Joanne brought up the bulletins earlier, and on our website, there's a bulletin from April 22nd. California offers automatic extensions for many premium tax filings and payments. And there's another one from April the 13th. California Insurance Commissioner issues bulletin on premium refunds, credits, and reductions under COVID-19 pandemic. So 2 relevant bulletins there that I think folks will want to go and look at for California.
Put your questions on the chat at this time. We've got 3 minutes, so if you have 1 or 2 questions, we'll be able to answer it. If not, this meeting is adjourned for you.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. We're gonna, like we said, we're gonna try to get more and more representatives from the insurance departments, from the surplus lines associations to join us. And we appreciate you guys being here. Hi, Dennis, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
And for the input.
Lisandra, thank you for joining us. Cheryl Joe, great to see you here again this week. You guys know we'll be here next week, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern. And again, if you have any questions throughout the week that you think of, just go ahead and send them to ccquestions@ilsainc.com.
Yes, Richard, I think just asked the question, is this available as a recording to listen to it again? Yes, absolutely. By tomorrow, Christian will rework it a little bit, and we should have it on the Spot On YouTube channel for you to go through, so that if you missed anything, you can go back and replay it.
And again, if you want to share it with someone else, you can share it. So it's going to be on YouTube, Spot On Insurance.
And if you have any further questions, anything that wasn't answered, and you thought about it later, you can always call our office at 254-729-8002. That's the ILSA office in Texas.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good to see you, Joanne.
Nice.
Yes.
Well, have a good day.
Bye,
Thank you,
Joanne.
Joanne, for
Bye-bye.
joining. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.